Jake Morrison pressed his face against the small window of the transport ship and watched Kepler-7 station grow larger in front of him. The metal structure looked old and beaten up, with dark patches where the outer hull needed repairs. Several docking arms hung at wrong angles, and the main communication tower flickered with weak lights. Jake had worked on dozens of space stations before, but this one looked worse than most. The transport pilot, a gruff man named Bill, shook his head as he guided the ship toward the docking bay. "That place has been falling apart for years," he said. "I don't know why they keep sending engineers out here. Nothing ever gets fixed, right?" Jake adjusted his tool belt and checked his equipment bag. He was 34 years old and had spent the last 12 years fixing broken systems across human space. The Zephyrian Mining Consortium had hired him because of his reputation for solving problems that other engineers gave up on. The pay was good and the challenge interested him. He liked making things work better. The docking process took longer than it should have. The automated systems kept giving error messages, and Bill had to dock manually. "See what I mean?" Hebo muttered as the ship finally connected with a loud clang. "Everything here is broken." Jake gathered his gear and stepped through the airlock into Kepler-7. The first thing he noticed was the smell. The air recycling system was not working properly, and there was a bitter taste in the recycled atmosphere. The lighting was too dim, and he could hear the hum of overworked machinery echoing through the corridors. A tall, insect-like alien approached him. The creature had 4 arms, compound eyes, and a chitinous exoskeleton that clicked when it moved. This was Crixtel, the Zephyrian overseer who had sent the work request to Earth. "Human Morrison," Crixtel said in heavily accented English. "You are late. We expected you yesterday." "The transport had engine trouble," Jake replied. "Your docking systems made it worse. The guidance computers are running on backup power." Crixtel's mandibles clicked in what Jake hoped was acknowledgement rather than annoyance. "Come, I will show you to your quarters, then we will tour the facility." They walked through corridors that clearly needed maintenance. Wall panels were loose, pipes leaked condensation, and several lights flickered or were completely dark. Jake made mental notes as they moved. The station was much larger than it appeared from outside, with multiple levels and sections. Most of the human crew seemed to be working in the lower levels, while the aliens occupied the upper administrative areas. Jake's quarters were small but clean. A narrow bed, a desk with a computer terminal, and a storage locker. He dropped his bags and followed Crixtel to meet the other senior staff. The chief administrator was a reptilian Valian named Neth Vor. He had green scales, yellow eyes, and spoke in a low, hissing voice. "The human engineer," he said when Crixtel introduced Jake. "We have heard much about human technical abilities. Perhaps you can solve problems that others cannot." "That's what I'm here for," Jake said. "What's the biggest issue you're facing?" "Power distribution," Crixtel answered quickly. "Mining output is down 60% from design specifications. Life support systems require constant repairs. The fabrication units produce defective components." Jake nodded. These were common problems on old stations, but fixing them usually required systematic upgrades rather than quick patches. "I'll need to see the engineering sections and review the maintenance logs." Nethvor and Crixtel exchanged a look that Jake caught but pretended not to notice. "Of course," Nethvor said. "Tomorrow we will show you everything." The tour began early the next morning. Jake quickly realized that the station's problems were worse than the reports had indicated. The main power plant was running at barely 30% efficiency. Coolant systems leaked constantly. The asteroid mining equipment broke down daily. Most concerning, many of the problems looked like they had been caused deliberately. In the power distribution center, Jake found tool marks on conduits that should never have been opened. Sabotage devices had been installed to create power surges that would damage connected equipment. In the life support section, filters had been replaced, with cheaper, inadequate substitutes that allowed contaminants into the air system. "Who ordered these modifications?" Jake asked, pointing to a power coupling that had been deliberately miswired. "Previous engineers," Crixtel said without meeting Jake's eyes. "They said it would improve efficiency." Jake knew that was a lie. The modifications would reduce efficiency and create dangerous conditions. Someone was deliberately keeping the station running poorly, but he could not understand why. A more efficient station would make more money for everyone. Over the next few days, Jake worked alone in the engineering sections, mapping the problems and developing solutions. He discovered that replacement parts ordered months ago had never arrived, despite being marked as delivered in the computer systems. Critical components were being sold, and the money was disappearing from the station accounts. The corruption went deeper than simple theft. Someone was deliberately sabotaging the station's operations while skimming profits from fake repairs and stolen equipment. Jake began to suspect that Crixtel and Nethvor were involved, but he needed proof before making accusations. On his fourth night at the station, Jake was working late in the main engineering shaft, a narrow tunnel that ran through the core of the station and contained the primary power and data conduits. He was alone, tracing a power drain that was costing the station thousands of credits per day. The attack came without warning. Jake heard a sharp crack, followed by the terrifying sound of escaping atmosphere. A section of the shaft wall had been blown outward, creating a hole that led directly to space. The sudden decompression pulled Jake toward the breach with tremendous force. Training and instinct took over. Jake grabbed the nearest support beam and pulled himself toward an emergency maintenance pod. These small one-person shelters were placed throughout the station for exactly this type of emergency. He reached the pod just as his lungs began to ache from the thin air. The pod sealed automatically, providing him with emergency oxygen and a communication link to the main station. As his breathing returned to normal, Jake examined the breach through the pod's small window. The damage was not from an accident or system failure. Someone had placed an explosive charge on the hull and detonated it when they knew Jake would be in the shaft. Jake activated the pod's small thruster system and maneuvered back to the station's emergency airlock. As he waited for the atmospheric systems to cycle, he studied the blast pattern more carefully. The explosive had been placed precisely to create maximum decompression in the engineering shaft while minimizing damage to critical systems. This was the work of someone who knew the station's layout very well. When Jake finally returned to his quarters, he found Crixtel and Nethvor waiting for him. They expressed concern about the accident and suggested that Jake might want to return to Earth for medical evaluation. "Just a minor accident," Jake said, watching their faces carefully. "These old stations can be dangerous. Good thing the emergency systems worked properly." He saw disappointment flicker in their eyes before they masked it with false concern. Now Jake knew for certain who had tried to kill him, and more importantly, why. His knowledge and skills threatened their profitable corruption scheme. They had tried to eliminate him before he could expose their operation. Jake smiled and told them he felt fine, and was eager to continue his work. What they did not know was that surviving their murder attempt had only made him more determined. He would not just fix their station. He would completely transform it and use their own corruption against them in the process. Jake spent the next morning acting shaken and nervous, pretending the previous night's explosion had left him traumatized. He stumbled when he walked, spoke in a quiet voice, and claimed he was having trouble concentrating. Crixtel and Nethvor seemed pleased with his apparent condition and suggested he take several days to recover. This was exactly what Jake wanted. While they thought he was hiding in his quarters feeling sorry for himself, he was actually studying the station's original blueprints and planning his counterattack. The files he found in the abandoned data cores showed him what Kepler-7 had been designed to do, and it was far more impressive than its current sorry state. The station had been built to process asteroids at 10 times its current rate while supporting a crew of 800 people. The original power plant could generate enough energy to supply a small city. The life support systems had been designed with multiple backup layers and could recycle air and water with near-perfect efficiency. Someone had systematically destroyed or disabled most of these capabilities. Jake's first ally came unexpectedly. Luna Garcia, a human maintenance worker, knocked on his door on the second day of his supposed recovery. She was a small woman with grease-stained overalls and suspicious eyes. "I heard about your accident," she said, looking around his quarters to make sure they were alone. "I've been working here for 18 months, and I know it wasn't an accident. Jake studied her face carefully. What makes you say that? Because I've been keeping records, Luna said. She pulled out a small data tablet and showed him files, full of maintenance reports, supply orders, and repair requests. Everything that goes wrong on this station gets blamed on old equipment or human error, but the problems follow patterns. Someone is breaking things on purpose. Jake made a decision to trust her. Show me what you've found. Luna's records painted a clear picture of systematic sabotage. Parts were ordered but never installed. Repairs were done incorrectly on purpose. Safety systems were disabled or bypassed. Most importantly, she had identified several alien workers who seemed as frustrated with the situation as the humans were. There's a Zephyrian engineer named Thys who keeps trying to fix the mining equipment properly, Luna explained. Every time she does, someone comes behind her and breaks it again. There's also an old Valian technician called Kelmar who was here when the station was built. He knows how things are supposed to work. Jake nodded. We're going to need help if we want to fix this place properly. Can you set up meetings with them? What are you planning? Luna asked. I'm going to repair this station the way it should have been done years ago, Jake said. But I need people I can trust, and I need to do it without Crixtel and Nethvor knowing what we're really doing. That evening, Luna arranged for Jake to meet with Thys and Kelmar in an unused storage bay deep in the station's lower levels. Thys was young for a Zephyrian, with bright green chitin and quick, nervous movements. Kelmar was ancient by Valian standards. His scales faded to a dull brown color and his movements slow but precise. The human engineer, Kelmar said in surprisingly good English. I helped build this station 40 years ago. It pains me to see what it has become. The mining systems are sabotaged every day, Thys added, her voice buzzing with frustration. I repair them at night, but by morning someone has broken them again. They blame me for the constant failures. Jake explained his plan. Instead of trying to work through official channels, they would repair and upgrade systems secretly. The station had fabrication equipment that could produce replacement parts, but it was being underutilized because the overseers claimed there were no raw materials. Jake had discovered that the asteroid processing facilities were actually full of refined metals and other materials that were supposedly being shipped off station, but were actually being stored in hidden compartments. We'll work during off shifts, Jake said. Small teams, different sections each night. We'll start with the power distribution system and work our way up to the major systems. What about security? Luna asked. Pete Johnson is the human security chief. He's been asking questions about the missing supplies and the weird accidents. Jake made a mental note to approach Pete carefully. Having a security officer on their team would be invaluable, but it would also be dangerous if he could not be trusted. The next night, Jake met with Pete Johnson in the security office. Pete was a big man with gray hair and suspicious eyes who had clearly seen too much during his career. Jake decided to be direct. Someone tried to kill me 3 nights ago, Jake said. I think it was Crixtel and Nethvor. I also think they've been sabotaging this station for years. Pete was quiet for a long moment. I've been wondering when someone would figure that out, he finally said. I've been building a case against them for months, but I needed proof of the sabotage. I can give you proof, Jake said. But first I want to fix this place properly. Are you willing to help? Pete smiled grimly. I've been waiting for someone to ask. With Pete's help, Jake was able to identify which areas of the station were not monitored by security cameras. More importantly, Pete revealed that there was a 4th member of their unofficial team already working on the station. Zoc was a Krathan, maintenance chief, a member of a species that looked like walking rocks and were known throughout the galaxy for their skill with heavy machinery. Zoc has been doing unauthorized repairs for months, Pete explained. The overseers think he's too stupid to cause trouble, but he's actually smarter than both of them combined. When Jake met Zoc, he understood why the overseers underestimated him. Krathan communicated primarily through subsonic rumbles that most species could not hear properly, and they moved slowly and deliberately. To someone who did not know better, Zoc might seem like a simple laborer. In reality, he was a master engineer who had been quietly keeping the station's life support systems functional. despite constant interference. The team began their secret repairs on Jake's sixth night at the station. They started small, replacing corroded power conduits in sections that would not immediately show up on the main monitoring systems. Jake had analyzed the station's power flow and identified bottlenecks that were reducing efficiency by more than half. Working with Thys and Kelmar, Jake discovered that many of the broken components had simply been disconnected or bypassed. The original builders had designed redundant systems that could automatically route around damaged sections, but someone had disabled these backup pathways. Zoc proved invaluable when it came to heavy repairs. His natural strength allowed him to move components that would have required lifting equipment, and his knowledge of the station's structural systems helped them make changes without weakening critical supports. Luna coordinated their activities and kept watch for security patrols. Pete made sure their work areas were not monitored and provided alibis when anyone asked where team members had been during their off shifts. After 2 weeks of secret repairs, the results began to show. Power efficiency improved by 15%. Air quality got noticeably better as they repaired filtration systems that had been sabotaged years earlier. The mining equipment started producing higher yields as Thys was finally able to complete proper repairs without interference. Jake's team had also been secretly manufacturing replacement parts using the station's own fabrication systems. The raw materials came from processed asteroids that were supposed to have been shipped off station, but had actually been stored in hidden compartments. They were literally using the Overseer's stolen materials to repair the damage caused by their sabotage. The improvements could not be hidden forever. Crixtel noticed the increased power output and started asking questions about unauthorized modifications. Nethvor discovered that mining yields were improving and demanded to know why the equipment was suddenly working better. Jake continued to act like he was still recovering from his accident, but he could see suspicion growing in their compound eyes and reptilian gaze. They knew something was happening, but they could not figure out what. The confrontation came when Crixtel discovered that materials were missing from the fabrication bay. He accused Jake of theft and demanded to search his quarters. Jake agreed, calmly, knowing that all evidence of their activities was hidden in sections of the station that the Overseers never visited. "Someone is stealing from this station," Crixtel declared at a staff meeting. "Materials are disappearing and unauthorized changes are being made to station systems." "Maybe someone is finally doing their job properly," Jake suggested innocently. "The station seems to be running better lately." Nethvor's eyes narrowed. "Human Morrison, you will restrict your activities to assigned areas only. No more wandering around the station during off-duty hours." Jake nodded agreeably, but he was already planning his next move. The Overseers thought they could control him by limiting his access, but they had no idea how much he had already accomplished. More importantly, they did not realize that their own corruption had given him all the tools he needed to completely take over their operation. That night, Jake met with his team one final time in their secret location. "They're getting suspicious," he told them. "It's time to move to Phase 2. "What's Phase 2? Luna asked. Jake smiled. "We're going to take control of this station." Jake knew the next assassination attempt would come soon. Crixtel and Nethvor were getting desperate as their profitable corruption scheme began to unravel. The station's improved efficiency was making it harder for them to hide their theft, and Jake's presence continued to threaten their operation. This time they would not rely on simple sabotage. Pete Johnson brought Jake the news during their morning security briefing. "A Krathan mercenary ship just docked at Bay 7, he said quietly. "The captain is Vex Mordain. He's got a reputation for making problems disappear permanently." Jake had heard of Vex Mordain. The mercenary was known throughout the outer sectors for his willingness to take jobs that other criminals would not touch. He specialized in making murders look like accidents or pirate attacks. "How many crew members?" Jake asked. 12. "Plus Vex himself," Pete replied. "They're carrying heavy weapons and breaching equipment. This isn't a simple hit. They're planning something big." Jake gathered his team in the hidden storage bay that had become their unofficial headquarters. Thys, Kelmar, Zoc, Luna, and Pete listened as he explained the situation. "They're going to stage a pirate attack," Jake said. "Vex will make it look like raiders hit the station and killed several crew members, including us. The Overseers will." claim they heroically defended the station, but could not save everyone. What do we do? Luna asked. Jake smiled. We turn the station into something Vex has never seen before. He's expecting to fight station security and maybe some armed civilians. Instead, he's going to face a fully automated defense system. Over. The past weeks, Jake had been quietly mapping every system on Kepler-7. He knew which mining lasers could be reprogrammed as weapons, which cargo bay doors could be turned into tactical barriers, and which maintenance systems could be used to control movement through the station. Zuck, I need you to modify the gravity plates in sections 12 through 18, Jake instructed. Make them adjustable from the engineering control room. Thais, can you reprogram the mining drones to respond to security commands? The mining drones are not weapons, Thais protested. They don't need to be weapons, Jake replied. They just need to be distractions. Kelmar, you know the old emergency systems better than anyone. Can we restore the automated lockdown protocols? The elderly, Valian's eyes brightened. The original builders included defense measures that were disabled years ago. I can reactivate them, but it will take time. We have until tomorrow night, Jake said. That's when they'll attack. Vex will wait for the night shift when there are fewer witnesses. Pete nodded grimly. I'll start moving the innocent crew members to safe areas. Most of the humans and the honest aliens work the day shift anyway. The team worked through the night and the following day, transforming Kepler-7 from a broken mining station into a technological fortress. Jake's modifications were subtle but effective. To a casual observer, everything would look normal until the moment the defense is activated. The mining lasers were designed to cut through asteroid rock, which made them powerful enough to damage small ships. Jake reprogrammed their targeting systems to recognize unauthorized weapons and hostile movement patterns. The lasers could not move quickly, but they did not need to. Jake planned to funnel the attackers into specific areas where the weapons would be most effective. The cargo bay doors were massive barriers designed to contain explosive decompression. Jake modified their control systems so they could be opened and closed rapidly to create choke points and escape routes. Combined with the adjustable gravity plates, he could make moving through certain sections of the station extremely difficult. The mining drones were small automated vehicles used to collect Earth samples and perform detailed surveys of asteroid surfaces. They were not designed for combat, but they carried sensors, communication equipment, and small manipulator arms. Jake programmed them to swarm intruders and interfere with their equipment while transmitting location data to the main defense system. Most importantly, Jake had restored the station's original emergency protocols. When activated, these systems would seal critical areas, cut power to non-essential sections, and automatically contact sector authorities. The protocols had been disabled because they interfered with the Overseer's smuggling operations. But now they would serve as Jake's ultimate trump card. Vex Mordane's attack began exactly when Jake had predicted. The mercenaries breached the station through an unused docking port during the night shift, expecting to find a few guards and some frightened civilians. Instead, they walked into Jake's trap. The first indication that something was wrong came when the mining lasers began tracking their movement. Vex's team had entered through the asteroid processing bay, which put them directly in the path of 6 heavy-duty cutting beams. The lasers activated automatically when the intruders' weapons were detected, filling the air with brilliant energy that forced the mercenaries to take cover behind processing equipment. This is not a normal mining station, one of Vex's crew reported over their communication channel, which Jake was monitoring through the station's sensor network. No kidding, Vex replied angrily. Find another route to the command center. The mercenaries tried to move through the cargo areas, but Jake was ready for them. As they entered Section 14, he activated the modified gravity plates. Half of Vex's team suddenly found themselves pinned to the floor by 3 times normal gravity, while the others floated helplessly in 0 gravity. The cargo bay doors slammed shut, trapping them in separate compartments. Meanwhile, the mining drones swarmed through the corridors like metallic insects. They could not harm the mercenaries directly, but they interfered with their equipment, blocked their vision, and made coordination impossible. Vex found himself fighting a cloud of small robots while trying to navigate a station that seemed to be actively working against him. Jake coordinated the defense from the engineering control room, watching the intruders' progress on multiple screens while making constant adjustments to his improvised weapon systems. Luna helped by monitoring communications and providing updates on crew evacuation. Pete led a small security team that guided the attackers into the areas where Jake's defenses would be most effective. Thys and Kelmar worked together to maintain the technical systems that Jake was pushing far beyond their design limits. Zoc used his massive strength to manually operate barriers and hatches when the automated systems were overwhelmed. The battle became a showcase of human engineering ingenuity. Jake used the waste disposal system to create clouds of obscuring vapor. He turned the air recycling fans into noise generators that made communication difficult. He even used the food preparation systems to create slippery surfaces that made movement treacherous. Vex Mordain was the experienced warrior, but he had never fought an enemy that could control every system around him. When he tried to breach a door, Jake sealed it remotely and opened a different path that led to another trap. When the mercenaries grouped together, Jake used the gravity plates to separate them. When they tried to destroy the station's systems, Jake rerouted critical functions through backup pathways they could not find. After 3 hours of fighting, Vex's team was scattered, exhausted, and trapped in various sections of the station. None of them had been seriously injured, but they could not advance and they could not retreat. Jake had effectively captured them using nothing but the station's own maintenance and mining equipment. The final confrontation came when Jake activated the emergency protocols and contacted sector authorities. The automated distress signal brought a patrol ship that arrived within hours, finding Vex Mordain and his crew contained in sealed compartments while the station operated normally around them. Crixtel and Nethvor tried to claim they had been hostages during the attack, but Jake had recorded everything. His evidence showed the payments they had made to Vex, the sabotage they had ordered, and their attempt to murder him weeks earlier. When the sector authorities finished their investigation, they found years of theft, corruption, and deliberate sabotage. The overseers were arrested and charged with multiple crimes. Vex and his crew were handed over to military police for trial. Jake stood in the main observation deck, looking out at the patrol ships that surrounded the station. Luna joined him, along with the rest of their team. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now we fix this place properly," Jake replied. "The mining consortium wants me to take over as station administrator. They're giving me a free hand to implement whatever changes I think are necessary." Thys clicked her mandibles excitedly. "You mean we can finally repair everything the right way?" "Better than that," Jake said. "We're going to completely rebuild this station. When we're done, Kepler-7 will be the most efficient mining operation in the sector." Kelmar's old eyes gleamed with interest. "You want to restore the original design specifications?" Jake shook his head. "I want to exceed them. We're going to show everyone what this station can really do when it's run by people who actually want it to work." Zoc rumbled something in his deep subsonic voice that the translation system rendered as, "This will be fun." Jake looked around at his unlikely team of allies and realized that the assassination attempt had actually given him the perfect opportunity. Instead of just fixing a broken station, 3 weeks after the failed attack, corporate investigators from the Zephyrian Mining Consortium arrived at Kepler-7 to assess the situation. Jake met them at the docking bay, expecting bureaucrats who would complicate his work with endless reports and regulations. Instead, he found a practical team of engineers and accountants who were genuinely impressed by what they discovered. "Station efficiency has increased by 200% in the past month," reported Chief Inspector Velrath, a senior Zephyrian executive. "Mining output is at levels we have not seen in 15 years. How did you accomplish this so quickly?" Jake led the inspection team through the station, showing them the repairs and modifications his team had made. The investigators were amazed by the simple elegance of the solutions. Instead of expensive replacement parts, Jake had used the station's own resources to manufacture improved components. Rather than following standard repair procedures, he had redesigned systems to work better than their original specifications. The previous administration was deliberately sabotaging operations, Jake explained as they toured the power distribution center. Once we removed that interference and made some basic improvements, the station's true capabilities became apparent. Inspector, Velrath examined the power coupling systems that Jake's team had upgraded. These modifications are not in any standard engineering manual. Where did you learn these techniques? Human engineering philosophy is different from most species, Jake replied. We don't just fix problems. We try to understand why the problems exist and then solve the underlying causes. The financial analysis was even more impressive than the technical improvements. The station was now generating profits at 4 times the previous rate, while using fewer resources and requiring less maintenance. The investigators could not find any flaws in Jake's documentation or any evidence of the corruption that had plagued the previous administration. Station Chief Morrison, Inspector Velrath said formally, the mining consortium is prepared to offer you full administrative authority over Kepler-7, along with a mandate to implement whatever changes you believe will improve operations further. Jake accepted the position but made it clear that his team would play key roles in the station's future. Theiss became Chief Mining Engineer, responsible for all extraction operations. Kelmar was appointed Senior Technical Advisor, using his knowledge of the station's original design to guide future improvements. Zoc took over as Maintenance Chief with authority to modify any system he thought could work better. Luna became Operations Coordinator, managing the daily activities that kept the station running smoothly. Pete remained as Security Chief but also took on the role of Personnel Administrator. With official authority and corporate backing, Jake began the second phase of his transformation plan. The repairs they had made secretly were only the beginning. Now he could completely redesign the station's operations to take advantage of technologies and techniques that the original builders had never considered. The first major project was a complete overhaul of the asteroid processing system. The original design used simple crushing and heating to extract useful materials, but Jake implemented a multi-stage refinement process that could separate rare elements and create specialized alloys. This contributed Zephyrian mining techniques that could extract materials from asteroids that had previously been considered worthless. Kelmar helped Jake understand the station's structural limitations and possibilities. Together, they designed expansion modules that could be built using processed asteroid materials. Instead of shipping raw ore to distant refineries, Kepler-7 would become a complete manufacturing facility, capable of producing finished components for other stations and ships. The life support improvements were equally dramatic. Jake replaced the simple air recycling system with a biological approach using specially designed algae that could process carbon dioxide more efficiently while producing food supplements. The water recycling system was upgraded to handle industrial waste as well as biological waste, turning contaminated water into distilled purity. Zoc's contributions were particularly valuable when it came to heavy engineering projects. His natural strength and deep understanding of structural mechanics allowed the team to make modifications that would have been impossible for other species. He designed new mounting systems for the expanded mining equipment and created reinforced pathways that could handle the increased traffic and materials flow. Luna's organizational skills kept the massive project coordinated and on schedule. She developed new work rotation systems that took advantage of each species' natural abilities and preferences. The Zephyrians worked best during certain temperature cycles, the Valians preferred dim lighting conditions, and the Krathens needed higher gravity environments for optimal performance. Pete's security innovations went far beyond simple protection. He designed monitoring systems that could track the location and status of every person on the station without being intrusive. His emergency response protocols ensured that any accident or equipment failure would be contained quickly and safely. The most innovative improvement was Jake's communication system upgrade. The original station had used standard subspace radio, which was slow and unreliable at long distances. Jake implemented a quantum entanglement communication array that could provide instant contact with corporate headquarters and other stations throughout the sector. Word of Kepler-7's transformation spread quickly through the mining industry. Other station administrators requested visits to study Jake's methods. Corporate executives wanted to understand how human engineering approaches could be applied to their operations. Military officials were interested in the defense innovations that had defeated Vex Mordane's mercenaries. The station began receiving delegations from across the galaxy. Jake found himself giving tours to Zephyrian mining specialists, Valian logistics experts, Krathan heavy industry engineers, and even representatives from species he had never met before. The key is not to accept limitations, Jake explained, to a group of visiting engineers from the Centauri Development Corporation. Every system can be improved if you understand its purpose and think creatively about alternative approaches. Jake's reputation grew beyond the mining industry. Universities requested copies of his technical reports. Engineering schools wanted him to give lectures on adaptive problem solving. The Human Colonial Administration offered him positions designing systems for new colonies and frontier outposts. More importantly, Jake's success was inspiring other human engineers throughout the galaxy. Reports began coming in of humans applying similar approaches to problems on other stations, ships, and facilities. The techniques Jake had developed at Kepler-7 were being adapted and improved by engineers facing different challenges in different environments. The station itself continued to evolve and improve. Jake's team made constant small adjustments and upgrades, always looking for ways to increase efficiency or improve working conditions. The mining output continued to climb, reaching levels that exceeded the original design specifications by more than 400%. 6 months after taking control of the station, Jake stood in the newly expanded observation deck and watched automated systems processing asteroids at a rate that would have been impossible under the old administration. The deck itself was one of his additions, a large space with viewing ports in all directions that served as both a monitoring center and a gathering place for the crew. The corporate board wants to put you in charge of their entire deep space operations, Luna told him as she joined him at the main viewing port. They're offering you a position that would put you in command of 47 stations and mining platforms. Jake considered the offer. The money would be excellent, and the challenge would certainly be interesting. He could apply his methods on a much larger scale and potentially transform an entire industry. What do you think? He asked Luna. I think you're not a corporate executive, she replied. You're an engineer who likes solving impossible problems. A desk job would drive you crazy within a month. Jake laughed. She was probably right. The bureaucracy and politics of running a large corporation would interfere with the hands-on work that he enjoyed most. Besides, Luna continued, we're not finished here yet. This station could be so much more than just a mining platform. Jake nodded. He had been developing ideas for converting Kepler-7 into a complete industrial complex that could manufacture everything from starship components to advanced electronics. With the right modifications, the station could become self-sufficient and serve as a hub for developing other facilities throughout the sector. The transformation that had begun as a simple survival response to an assassination attempt had evolved into something much larger. Jake was not just fixing broken systems anymore. He was proving that human engineering approaches could solve problems that other species had considered impossible. As he watched the mining operations continue their smooth, efficient work, Jake realized that his real achievement was not the technical improvements he had made. It was showing that any problem could be solved if you refused to accept that it was unsolvable and were willing to think beyond conventional approaches. 8 months after Jake Morrison had first arrived at Kepler-7, the station had become the most talked-about facility in the sector. Mining output had reached levels that corporate executives had thought impossible. The station operated with an efficiency that made other facilities look primitive by comparison. More importantly, Jake's methods were being studied and copied throughout human space and beyond. The transformation was complete, but Jake's work was far from finished. He had established what he called the Morrison Engineering Protocols, a set of problem-solving approaches that were now being taught at technical schools across the galaxy. The protocols emphasized adaptive thinking, resource optimization, and systematic analysis of underlying causes rather than surface symptoms. Dice had become one of the most sought-after mining engineers in the industry. Her combination of traditional, Zephyrian techniques with Jake's innovative approaches had revolutionized asteroid processing. She frequently traveled to other stations as a consultant, teaching mining crews how to extract more materials with less waste. Kelmar had written, a comprehensive technical manual documenting the station's transformation. The book had become required reading for engineering students and was being translated into dozens of languages. Despite his advanced age, he had never been busier or happier, finally able to see the station operating as its original designers had intended. Zoc had developed new techniques for heavy construction in space that were being adopted by shipbuilders and station architects throughout the galaxy. His innovations had reduced construction times and costs while improving structural integrity. Several universities had offered him teaching positions, though he preferred the hands-on work at Kepler-7. Luna had become an expert in multi-species crew management and coordination. Her methods for organizing diverse teams were being implemented on stations and ships where different species had previously struggled to work together effectively. She had also earned an advanced degree in operations management through correspondence courses. Pete had evolved from a simple security chief into a specialist in facility protection and emergency response. His integrated approach to safety and security was being studied by military academies and civilian safety organizations. He had written several papers on the use of environmental systems for defensive purposes. The success of Kepler-7 had attracted attention beyond the mining industry. Jake regularly received requests for consultation on problems ranging from failing space habitats to malfunctioning terraforming equipment. Each project presented new challenges and opportunities to refine his approaches. The most significant development came when Jake received an emergency communication from Meridian Research Station, a scientific facility located in a distant star system. The station's life support systems had suffered catastrophic failures, and conventional repair efforts had been unsuccessful. The facility housed critical research into xenobiology and stellar physics that could not be evacuated or abandoned. "We need your help, Jake," said Dr. Rachel Palmer, the station's director, during their subspace conversation. "We've tried everything our engineers can think of. The failures are cascading faster than we can repair them. If we can't solve this problem in the next week, we'll have to evacuate permanently and lose decades of research." Jake studied the technical reports that Meridian Station transmitted. The problems were complex and interconnected, involving atmospheric processing, power distribution, water recycling, and temperature control. Conventional approaches had failed because fixing one system created stress on others, leading to new failures in an endless cycle. "This looks like a job for the whole team," Jake told his colleagues. "Are you interested in a field trip?" Within 12 hours, Jake's core team was aboard a fast transport ship heading for Meridian Station. They brought portable fabrication equipment, emergency supplies, and most importantly, the collective experience they had gained from transforming Kepler-7. Meridian Station was in worse condition than Kepler-7 had ever been. The facility was operating on emergency power, with life support systems failing in multiple sections. The research staff was crowded into a few habitable areas while automated systems struggled to maintain basic survival conditions. Jake's team immediately began their systematic analysis. Instead of trying to fix individual problems, they mapped all the interconnections between systems to understand how the failures were spreading. The pattern that emerged was disturbing but familiar. "Someone sabotaged this place too," Luna observed, after reviewing the maintenance logs. "These aren't random failures. Someone has been systematically weakening key systems for months." The sabotage at Meridian Station was more subtle than what they had found at Kepler-7. Instead of obvious tampering, someone had been making small modifications that would cause systems to fail under stress. The failures looked like natural wear and tear, but the timing was too convenient to be coincidental. Jake's investigation revealed that the sabotage was being carried out by Dr. Marcus Webb, the station's deputy director, who had been selling research data to competitors while ensuring that the station's experiments would fail before producing valuable results. His plan was to force the evacuation of Meridian Station so he could claim the research for himself. The solution required Jake to adapt his techniques to a completely different type of facility. Research stations had different priorities than mining platforms. Safety was more important than efficiency, and the delicate scientific equipment required special consideration. Working around the clock, Jake's team began implementing emergency repairs while designing long-term improvements. They used Kepler-7's fabrication equipment to produce replacement components that were better than the original parts. Thais applied her materials expertise to create stronger, more reliable system connections. Kelmar's experience with complex, integrated systems helped them understand how to make changes without disrupting ongoing research. Zock's strength was crucial for replacing heavy equipment in the station's cramped corridors. Luna coordinated the work schedule to ensure that repairs could be made without interfering with critical experiments. Pete identified security vulnerabilities that Dr. Webb had been exploiting and sealed them against future tampering. The repair mission became another demonstration of human problem-solving abilities. Jake's team not only fixed the immediate problems, but improved the station's overall capabilities. When they finished, Meridian Station was more efficient and reliable than it had ever been. Dr. Palmer was amazed by the results. "You've turned our failing facility into a showcase of engineering excellence," she said. "How do you do it?" "We don't accept that problems can't be solved," Jake replied. "Every system can be improved if you understand its purpose and think creatively about how to achieve that purpose better." The success at Meridian Station led to more requests for help from facilities throughout the galaxy. Jake realized that there was a need for a permanent organization that could provide rapid response to engineering emergencies while also training others in adaptive problem-solving techniques. When they returned to Kepler-7, Jake announced his plan to establish the Adaptive Engineering Institute. The facility would be based at Kepler-7 but would serve the entire sector, providing training, consultation, and emergency response services. "We'll teach people to think like engineers instead of just following procedures," Jake explained to his team. "The goal is to create a generation of problem solvers who can handle any challenge they encounter." The institute attracted students from dozens of species and hundreds of worlds. The curriculum combined theoretical knowledge with practical experience, emphasizing hands-on problem solving over memorization of standard procedures. Students learned to work with limited resources, adapt to unexpected conditions, and collaborate effectively with beings whose thinking processes were completely different from their own. Jake's teaching methods were as innovative as his engineering techniques. Instead of lectures and textbooks, students worked on real problems affecting actual facilities. They learned by doing, making mistakes, and discovering solutions through experimentation and creative thinking. The Institute's reputation grew rapidly. Governments requested teams to solve infrastructure problems on new colonies. Corporations hired graduates to improve their operations. Even military organizations sought training in adaptive engineering for their technical personnel. 1 year after establishing the Institute, Jake stood in the expanded observation deck of Kepler-7 and watched ships arriving with new students and supplies. The station that had once been a failing mining platform was now the center of an educational revolution that was spreading throughout the galaxy. Luna joined him at the viewing port, carrying the latest efficiency reports. "Mining output is still increasing," she said. "We're now producing more refined materials than some entire star systems." Jake smiled as he watched a group of new students being led through the station by Thys and Kelmar. They came from a dozen different species, and they would return to their home worlds with new ways of thinking about problems and solutions. "The mining output isn't the important part anymore," Jake said.